Hello, 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 and welcome to today's episode of Her Version. This podcast is dedicated to sharing stories of struggle and triumph, a platform that allows individuals to tell their truth in order to inspire and uplift others. For those of you that are new to this podcast and like content like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share. I am your host, Sabrina Victoria. Let's jump right in. Thank you so much for being here. For those of you that are already jumping on live, I see you. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with us today. If you're watching us on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay so that we know that you were here and we can send you some love. The Her Version platform is built on storytelling and the understanding that many times our greatest learning experiences come from listening to other people's stories. Today, I am speaking with an amazing woman named Kayla. Kayla's journey of resiliency, healing, and regeneration has led her to her mission, which is to be the change that our world needs by taking transformative action with like-minded individuals for one single purpose: to change lives. Kayla believes that recovery is really a journey of discovery because the greatest thing you have to offer in life is your authentic self. And you are worth knowing. I am so excited to welcome Miss Kayla today. Welcome, lady. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'm so honored to be on this podcast, Her Version. I love what you're doing. It's so inspirational and right up my alley.
I love it. Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to sit down and hang out with me for a little bit and share some of your, some of your journey and some of your story. I think that it's so important, not only for us for healing, but also for other people who are on a similar path or who know people who are on a similar path, to be able to kind of speak to them with a little more kindness.
Yeah.
So I would love to kind of open up just to kind of hear what's been going on lately and ask you what I like to play the rose and thorn game of the past year. So what is your rose and what is your thorn, the best thing and worst thing that's happened to you over the past 12 months?
Awesome. Thank you. So the best and exciting thing that's happened to me over the past 12 months has probably been this incredible project that I've been working on. I work for an amazing organization, South Florida Wellness Network. We're a nonprofit, and recently in this past year, we were given funding to start a second recovery community center. And it is going to be in Hollywood, Florida, which is so exciting. And I think the most exciting part of this new venture is that I was given the opportunity to really take the lead on this. And I'm the program supervisor of the new recovery community center. And so it has been such an exhilarating, exciting, learning, triumph, and failure and achievement, and just getting to this place where we're literally about to have our grand opening. And that's all happened in this past year. And so I've experienced such growth in my leadership, in my knowledge of just what it takes to really create something like that for the community. And then seeing the impact that we have in people's lives, and really gearing this second site towards youth and young people that are struggling, because we're seeing such a need in the community. So I'm super stoked, because just been able to design this whole new recovery community center and getting the mentorship of somebody that I really look up to, which is the CEO of South Florida Wellness Network, Susan Ayamora, and just working diligently with her to get this project going. So that's definitely the rose, because it's definitely had me grow, oh my gosh, so much.
I bet. What about your thorn?
I think my thorn, and I wouldn't, I feel like we're constantly growing as individuals, and we experience challenges, and it's like how we view those challenges. And I'm a mom, so being a mom in itself is the most beautiful challenge and opportunity that we have, and blessing. And I would say this past year, the thorn, but that has really led to a lot of growth and healing, has been just this journey with my son. And he's had just some behavioral challenges and things from my past, and things from like some of his early childhood trauma, and things from having just like an absentee father in his life and stuff. And so really being able to like work through some of that and experience a lot of healing. And we know that there's pain that comes with healing, right? Like moving through that process. So it's really been something that has been a blessing, but it's also been pretty challenging as a parent to watch your child kind of struggle and have them having to kind of like seek their own healing journey. But being able to champion him has been the biggest blessing out of that thorn.
That's awesome. How old is he?
He's 11.
Nice age.
Yes. Oh my goodness. But he's like 11, like going on 17, because I'm like, he's so brilliant, and he's so like, just like wise and like ahead of the game. And we have just the best relationship, which is such a blessing.
That's fantastic. When you think about your parenting, past and present, how much has it improved as you are working on like your personal development and your mental and emotional health?
Oh my gosh, it's like transformative. Like I was 17 when I got pregnant.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I was 18 years old when I had my son. I was not in a good place in my life, and I was a child raising a child, so my son has actually really had to grow up with me growing up, and that has, that's challenging. I didn't realize the responsibility of being a parent. I just knew like, man, I love this kid with all my heart, but I still hadn't worked through a lot of my own challenges. So it's hard to care for somebody correctly when you haven't been correctly cared for. And also like just learning just the needs that he has, and learning from, my mistakes, and learning from, even like my parents, because I think we do the best we can with what we know and what we have. And the more that you pursue kind of growing and learning, and being willing to like look at your failures as opportunities, just as that, because I think the hardest thing for parents is like, we do this like, oh my gosh, I'm failing my children, but then I'm going to like beat myself up over it, and it's like, just like I have to have a regular expectation of my son making mistakes, I have to have that same expectation as a mom. And as long as I'm continuing to like really be honest and open and willing to grow in that area, like my mothering continues to get better. So
I love that.
Yeah.
Very cool. Absolutely. What was the pivoting point, between then and now? 18-year-old mother.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're obviously 11 years older than that.
Yes. 20 this year. Oh my gosh, so crazy.
Congrats on that. Would you say, when you think about your life's journey and all of the ups and downs you've had over the last 30 years, where was the biggest challenge? What was the biggest challenge?
So I think the biggest challenge that I experienced is one, like really not knowing who I am, right? Really not knowing who I am. I think like, it's safe to say that every family deals with some kind of dysfunction, right? Because we're human, we're flawed. And so not really knowing how to deal with the dysfunction in my family. And then also kind of, as I was in my adolescence, I was really placed in a space where I really had to parent myself, because I moved in with my dad. And that kind of he was that kind of absentee parent, not really like intentional in parenting and raising me. And so, and I think I really struggled in that aspect. And, my son's father was 10 years old, my senior, right? So, you can see like this young girl really looking for this father figure, this man, that something, some kind of love. And that, my son's father kind of was that for me, right? Like I looked to him in that sense, and really just learning and growing into the woman that I am today. And it was really just through rising above failure, because through my adolescence, I turned to drugs. I turned to lots of things that I was trying to like fill this this void and this hurt that I felt, deeply inside with all of these things, and none of it worked, and then even getting pregnant at such a young age and thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be the answer, right? Like, this is the love that I'm looking for. This is what's going to change everything. And, having my son was such a magical moment in my life, and it did change a lot of things, but did it truly change everything? Like, was I a changed woman? The answer is no. I think I was changed in some ways, but here I am still a 17-year-old, and I've had extensive trauma through my adolescence, and I'm still like, really the way that my mind is operating and the things that I'm doing is not healthy, and I'm still very like immature in my thinking. But now I'm raising a child, and I just don't have that reality yet, of like how this is impacting him, so
Yeah.
I'm still in this I guess, very selfish, but then also like still trying to figure out like who am I?
Was there a turning point for you?
Oh my gosh, yeah, there was a giant turning point for me. I think that sometimes we look at our life circumstances, and the most difficult parts of our life enable us to grow the most. And I went through some really difficult moments in life. Having my son, I had my son, I was able to kind of manage and function, and was trying to like get my life together, because I was before that, like, completely strung out on drugs. I didn't graduate high school because of that. I ended up getting my GED while I was pregnant. I actually found out I was pregnant in a car accident, going to or leaving from a party from high school graduation where I did not graduate. And I ended up having to go to jail the next day after I was released from the hospital, pregnant, and so that was crazy in itself. And, and I had like that epiphany, okay, I'm going to try to, really get my life together. But there was no like actual like change. There was no like working through some of the things. I didn't understand that I really need to work on this healing journey, right? And this process. So like nothing changed except that I'm pregnant, and now I'm not doing drugs, and I'm, trying to get a job, get my GED and stuff like that. So I think the internal transformation that I really had came after like even more struggle, because I had my son. I had saved enough money, got us like a double wide trailer. I was working my butt off. I'm a single mom. His dad was literally sentenced to prison the same month that I found out I was pregnant.
Wow.
So it's just crazy. Yeah. And so, I continue to kind of live in that lifestyle and have those same friends and struggle with those same issues. But it wasn't until, my son was around like almost 5 years old, I actually lost custody of him. And my life continued to just like really, I was just like up and down. And then I hit this struggle where everything started to just go downhill,
Did you lose him because of going back to drugs or your lifestyle, or what? Why?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So his father got out of prison. His father and I had the most toxic relationship, very toxic relationship. He was actually also my abuser. And so there was definitely a trauma bond. And I think, when I think of like the first person you love type of thing, like that was him. I always said he was like my first love, and I wanted to be his savior and fix him and be enough and all of those things. But when he got out of prison, I was hoping that we would be a family. My son was then 3 years old. And so, I was trying to do the whole family thing, but really nothing had changed in his life. I think things actually had gotten a little bit worse. And so then I just subjected myself more to that lifestyle. And so actually my son's father ended up going to prison again after a couple of years. I don't even think he was out for maybe like a year and a half. And, my lifestyle was just downhill as well. I was, completely addicted to drugs again, and just struggling. And like, it was really hard because, what I wanted was to be like this amazing, great mom. And it felt like impossible to do so, and then I like struggled with, am I even worthy to be, my son's mom? Am I worthy to be Cooper's mom? And, the transition really happened, I think, when I pretty much lost everything. And losing him was like the biggest, hardest thing I ever went through. But it was such a reality check, and it was so necessary for this pivot, right? Like this pivot in my life was losing custody of my son. I also, picked up some charges in both Georgia and in South Carolina. And now I was being arrested and I was already on probation. And so I'm now looking at a prison sentence. Yeah. So it was like, okay, custody of my son, prison sentence. I'm living out of my car. Like life is just like at its peak of horrible, you know? And it's funny because I think that like, you know, instantly like we kind of cry out, even if we don't like believe in God or we don't pray, we don't do this, but like your life is so hard and you're just like, you know, you're just crying out to something, like something needs to change. And, you know, those changes that were made, I didn't know how they were going to come in the form of. And, you know, like jail for me was a blessing, right? Like getting arrested and, you know, getting on probation, meeting this woman who was known to be the toughest, meanest, like probation officer out there, violate you on like the quickest, you know, whatever. And she ended up being like my guardian angel. You know, I think she saw something in me, you know, she saw beyond, you know, the sheet of paper with all the way I broke the law. And she just saw this little girl that was just broken and lost and afraid. And she really just spoke to me like a human being when like at a time in my life where I just felt anything but, you know, and she built like a connection with me. And she's actually the reason that I ended up going to a treatment center in Tennessee in the middle of nowhere, but just really accepting help, right? Like realizing like and acknowledging like, hey, that like my life is still worth something and that I really need to do something in order to change. But it starts with this healing journey of accepting help. And that I wasn't going to be able to do that alone. And so she's the reason that I was taken out of shackles and allowed to go on this healing journey with the stipulations that I would return back to jail after the healing journey of going to treatment and face my charges, be extradited to South Carolina to then see what they were going to sentence me with.
Okay. And what happened?
So I went it was this treatment center in Nunley, Tennessee. It was called The Ranch. And I was so scared. I was like, oh my gosh, like there was so much fear in me. And I think like the fear of just like dealing with everything. And then at this point in my life, like I truly like just despised myself because I'm like, how could you have let things get this far? You know, like how could you have kept going back to the abuse? How could you have, you know, keep you know, picking up drugs, you know, like all of these things. And how could you let your son be taken from you? And like where my life was. And it just felt like I was literally in a grave and I had the shovel and I was the one digging, you know? And so, you know, that journey to getting there and like starting that process was like so scary. And I had actually some incredible therapists who are definitely a huge part of why I am who I am today and healed and have been able to like overcome a lot of things because they worked diligently with me. I had a trauma therapist and a regular therapist, and both said it was like pulling teeth to get me to talk at first. Like I just was so closed off. And I think I was in this place where I just didn't trust anyone, including myself. But it was just, you know, really hard to like really open up and allow somebody into my space, into my hurt, into like everything that I had experienced. And that was like a really a big process, but they were willing to put in the work to build that relationship with me, and be patient with me. And, you know, that during that time was the most difficult, beautiful, just like breakthrough time of my life. I always tell people, man, like probably the most difficult but greatest thing you can do is really work on you, right? Is really to focus on.
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, and if you're not willing to do the work, your life will suffer, you know, because there's so much freedom when you walk through that, even though it's scary walking through that. But I just want people to know you don't have to walk through that alone. And then you can rise above those adversities and rise above those challenges and those failures. And that's exactly what these women helped me do. They helped me to really learn who I am and learn what I'm worth, and know that I can experience healing and that I was definitely worthy of being Cooper's mom, because God wouldn't have blessed me with him when he did, even though when he did seemed to be like the worst timing in the world, but it was obviously like the right timing, and so I just had to trust in that. And I was only supposed to be in treatment, I think, for like it was like the 30 days, right? And then it was like, okay, we're extending to 60 days. And I kept getting so angry about like these extensions. And then by the end of the 3 months, I was like, no, I need more time. I need more time. And I was there for almost 5 months. And by the time I left there, I didn't want to leave. And that's how my two therapists, they knew I was ready. They're like, you're ready to fly, but I was just like so scared to, because man, like there was so much safety that I had experienced for the first time in a really long time. Like that became my safe place, right? Because as you're working through trauma, and when you've lived and you are still like in that trauma and in that, like living in that space in your mind, it's like really hard to like, feel safe, right? So then your mind is like fight, flight, like it's going crazy, and so I finally had felt like, okay, calm and at peace and at a place where I feel safe. And I was able to allow people in, and I was able to really experience that breakthrough healing.
Yeah. I want to backtrack a little bit, because one of the things that we talk about a lot on this podcast, and I love to hear other people's take on it, and you never know who's listening, is the trauma bond. It's such I remember for me, I felt so stupid all of the time, leaving and coming back and leaving and coming back. And, liking it to like, we're so in love, and that we're so passionate, and all of the excuses that we give it. But I would love for you to explain, what trauma bond means to you, and what your trauma bond looked like, because everyone's is a little bit different.
Okay. Yeah. So I think, for me, like what trauma bond means for me, and like what it really has been with that experience was, like you said, I think that this idea and this love, right? Like this very toxic love, because I had to ask myself, like, was it really love? And I sat and I'm like, man, like, is that really love? And I have to say, like, yes, it was, because I believe that like love is so powerful that it can cause you to do crazy things, and it can really, and it's a choice, and it's like you'll be willing to take in so much and endure so much. But now I don't believe that it was a healthy love, right? Because I think it was also this love of like, this person holds this space in my life where they're almost like a god, right? Like they're this god in my life, that not only do I feel like I just love with everything in me, that I'm willing to endure anything for this person, but there's the manipulation, and there's just that, I'm not worthy of anything greater than this, right? So you almost believe like, this is what I'm worthy of. So I believe that like what is in my heart reflects in my outward, right? So if I believe I deserve this, and that, I'm not worthy of anything better, and that this is maybe what love looks like, then, it's just this whole like psychological mess up in your mind. And so like the bond part of it too is just like, I mean, as a woman who was dealing with like just no self-worth, like feeling all of those things, I felt just like so like connected to this person. I have such a history with this person, and an abusive, a toxic history, right? But a history at that, right? Because there was obviously like a time and a space where there was this like, I fell in love with him, type of thing. And so, the bond is that like, I just feel like they hold such a hold on you. There's such a hold on you, because it's like, when I think back to like, man, like, who I am today, I'm like, I would never, like put myself in those situations again. But that's because I've changed so much, and I've healed so much, and I know who I am. I know what I'm worth, and I know what I'm willing to put up with. And I know that like something like that is not like love on their end, right? Like, for a man to be that way in a relationship, they're not loving you, and so I really just didn't love myself. And the trauma bond that we had was just that. It was like this constant, like, in my mind, like my greatest desire was to always be a family, right? Like I just always wanted to have this family. When I had my son, like I had created this fantasy that like that was going to be enough for me, that was going to be enough for him, like we were going to be this great family. I didn't want to do drugs, like I didn't want to live this like crazy lifestyle, like I didn't want those things, but I just wanted this man to love me, love my son, and that was enough. And we could just be this like white picket fence type of family. That is not what the image was, but that was the fantasy that kept me with hope, and I think that